Hey folks, this is it, the last day before the Canadian election, and I've chosen to finish my campaign the same way I started it, with a YouTube video, and later today I may even do a Facebook Live. I'm not going to get into all the thank yous. I'll do that tomorrow after the election is over. Right now, I want to remind everyone what they're voting for tomorrow. I want to remind everyone that the only real choice in this election is the People's Party of Canada. The only real choice for Cape Breton Canso is this guy, Billy Joyce, and the team of supporters that have backed me from day one. Why is the People's Party of Canada the only real choice, you may ask? Well, let's get a few things clear. The PPC is the only party concerned with Canada's growing debt. We're the only party not making spending promise after spending promise with your money to buy your votes. While all the other parties pander to Canadians on matters that are supposed to be provincial jurisdiction, like healthcare, education, municipal infrastructure, housing and transportation, the People's Party is focused on the issues that impact all Canadians and that are actually federal jurisdiction. The other parties are worried solely about the here and now and winning votes, whereas the People's Party is concerned with the future of this country and the mess we'll be leaving for our children, our grandchildren, and their future children. If we keep up this present pace, there will be nothing left in the pension funds by the time I retire, let alone when my children retire. But the only responsible leader looking out for the future is Maxime Bernier. We want to eliminate the capital gains tax, reduce corporate tax to 10% to allow businesses to invest in their human resources. We want to reduce personal income tax to 15% for earners between $15,000 and $100,000 and to 25% for all earners over $100,000. We want a full tax exemption on the first $15,000 earned by all Canadians as well. The federal leaders' debates, if nothing else, proved that the only adult in the room was Maxime Bernier. While all the other candidates went at each other like 12-year-olds on a playground, Mr. Bernier was clear, concise, and didn't make any promises he couldn't keep. All the other parties are proposing 5-year plans for the economy and balancing the budget. I wonder why. It's the perfect excuse to come back in 4 years and say, well, we needed 5 years to balance the books. Vote for us again and we promise to do it next year. Maxime Bernier and the People's Party are the only ones allowing for the possibility of being held accountable by balancing the budget in 2 years. And it seems that after those debates, despite what the fake polls have been telling us, Canadians took to Google to search for the platforms of the various parties. And guess which party was trending highest in the hours following the debates? You guessed it right if you guessed the People's Party of Canada. But still, not a word mentioned on the fake news like CBC and CTV and Global. Not a peep about it. CPAC did a series called Ridings to Watch. In my riding of Cape Breton Canso, they profiled all the candidates, including Michelle Dockrell, an independent candidate, but they omitted me, in spite of the fact that I was the first confirmed candidate in our riding. They called it an oversight. I call it election meddling. CBC ran a few articles in my riding, where I was only mentioned in passing in the last line of the article. The local radio station, 1015 The Hawk, requested an interview, so I gave them 30 minutes of my busy schedule. What did they do? They ran a hit piece on me and used a 20-second clip on abortion out of context. But I'll get back to that a little later. Our media is indeed the enemy of the people. Like Donald Trump or not, he's been telling the truth about the media for 3 years now. And finally, many people are noticing because we can see it firsthand in this election right here in Cape Breton Canso. And they're all forms of election meddling. Speaking of election meddling, have you heard the latest? It looks like Maxime Bernier was right when he called out the Conservatives for being intellectually and morally corrupt. Andrew Scheer and his merry band of crooks at the Conservative Party hired a firm led by Warren Kinsella to dig up and propagate dirt on the People's Party of Canada. This, too, is election meddling, and is worse than anything the Russians were accused of doing in the American election of 2016. Scheer is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and he's made it clear that both he and Trudeau are both lying hypocrites. Period.
Warren Kinsella was apparently hired to do your party's dirty work in attacking Maxime Bernier with the condition that the contract wouldn't be traced back to the Conservatives. How do you think the public will perceive this?
We don't make comments on vendors that we may or may not have engaged with.
So to that end, did your party hire Mr. Kinsella to attack the Liberals?
As I said, we don't make comments on vendors that our party may or may not have engaged with.
Yes or no, did you hire Mr. Kinsella?
As a rule, we never make comments on vendors that we may or may not have engaged with.
What is the rule that you have here that you can't say which contractors you're working with?
We just don't comment on the contracts that we may or may not
Why?
have.
Is it a rule you just made up?
We don't make comments on contracts that we may or may not have or vendors that we may or may not have engaged with.
And again, one of my colleagues asked if Liberal leader Justin Trudeau had said that, would you accept that answer?
It's we don't make comment on contracts that we may or may not have. Thanks very much, everyone. Merci beaucoup.
This is much worse than people realize. As of today, Warren Kinsella has deleted his Twitter account, and an investigation into the matter has been called for. Maxime Bernier also weighed in on the situation through his Twitter account. I invite you to go check that out. Then there's the whole multiculturalism. Nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, globalism and political Islam. And the notion that more multiculturalism is better is just false. But before you call me a racist, remember the wise words of Salim Mansour, professor of political science at Western University.
Globalism and Islamism joined together is the elephant in the room. And we cannot seriously address any of the issues that demand our attention, whether it be policies pertaining to immigration and domestic security, or the economy, or jobs in Alberta's energy sector, and in southern Ontario's auto and auto parts industry, or about the health and welfare of our people, or foreign affairs and defense of our country, without taking into account the elephant in our room. But both the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party are fully committed in publicly denying the presence of this elephant in the room. The only difference between the two parties is that one is willing to ride the elephant and the other is seeking to hide from the elephant. We in the People's Party with Maxime Bernier are the only people in Canada at this time in our history endangered by globalism and Islamism, fully prepared to engage in a national conversation about this elephant in the room and how it subverts the national interests of Canada.
You may also want to look into this woman as well. She goes by the name One Godless Woman on YouTube.
Again, because their prophet advises them to do this. These people have nothing in their heads except the ideology of Islam and to force it on everyone. If they could, and trust me, if you allow them, they will do this. They want everyone to look and think like them, be it by force or by whatever method they choose, which seems to be victimhood so far, and it's working.
And while you're at it, have a listen to what this former Muslim man has to say about globalism and radical political Islam.
I'm a former Muslim, and I can tell you I lived in the countries. I've lived in Iran, I've lived in Iraq, I've lived in Afghanistan, Yemen, Oman, Saudi, and the fact of the matter is, in countries particularly like Iran and Iraq, on a daily basis, actually, this is part of the morning ritual. Before you get up, it says death to America, death to this president, death to Russia, death to this. They actually talk about, you know, how infidels should be dead and how non-Muslims should be dead, kill them. They actually say these things. Here in Canada, they're afraid to express themselves because they lack numbers. And once they have enough numbers, they're going to practice Islam the traditional way, the way it's done in the Middle East, where they actually, in the mosque, practice death of non-believers, which is exactly what happens.
So before you go accusing me of racism or xenophobia, ask yourselves, are the three people I just saw and listened to racist as well? Can a man from India, a woman from Saudi Arabia, and another man from the Middle East with brown skin actually be racist or xenophobic of the people they used to share a religion with for years? Are they all lying to us, or is it the media lying to us? Are they lying to us, or is it Trudeau, Scheer, Singh, and May that are lying to us? For you to decide, I guess. As for all the attacks against me and other party members for homophobia and transphobia and such, if we were really homophobic, why would we be standing up against ideologies like Islam? If we were really homophobic, wouldn't we just let people like this guy impose Sharia law and do what they do in Palestine?
What would happen to a gay couple in Palestine, sir?
What?
What would happen to a gay couple in Gaza?
Executed according to Islamic law. Islam doesn't endorse gayism. Islam doesn't endorse homosexuality.
Well, I see. Okay, so would you like to see Sharia law in Canada replace Canadian law?
At some point it will. You know, because we have families, we are making babies. You're not. Your population is going down the slump.
That's
right?
Yeah.
And by 2060, according to Pew Research Institute, your research, by 2060, Muslims will be the biggest religious group the world over.
Right.
What are you going to do then?
Actually,
are you going to oppose Sharia even then?
On the contrary, we're very much in support of the LGBTQ community. What we're against is the sexualization of children. We're against the idea of schools raising our children in ways we don't approve of and teaching them things we don't feel they need to hear. Is that such a horrible thing? Is it not a right as parents to raise our kids the way we want? We oppose the sick and twisted outfits that some people in the LGBT community wear out in public in demonstrations of supposed pride. If my wife and I dressed like this to walk down the street anywhere, we'd be arrested for indecent exposure. Imagine the outrage if I dressed my wife in leather chaps with a leather mask and plastic ball in her mouth while walking down the street on a leash like a dog. But if we speak out against this, we can go to jail because of laws like Bill C-16. A law that every party, including the Conservative Party, voted in favor of. A law that prevents a British Columbian dad from referring to his daughter as his daughter. A law that allows Jessica Yaniv to destroy the careers of women in British Columbia, all because she feels that as a transgender woman, getting a bikini wax on her male genitalia is a fundamental right. The People's Party of Canada will repeal Bill C-16, will stop the sexualization of our children, and will put an end to the politically correct nonsense being shoved down our throats. Why can't straight Christians be proud of their sexual orientation? Why aren't we allowed with a straight pride flag? It's hypocrisy at its finest, and only the PPC is standing to get rid of the hypocrisy. The People's Party of Canada are the only ones that will defund the CBC and their phony journalists who present only portions of the truth, or in some cases, outright lies. There were once over 60,000 small dairy farmers across this great country. Now we're down to just over 10,000, and it's all because of the dairy lobby that made Andrew Scheer the leader of the Conservatives. Because of supply management, every Canadian pays approximately $500 more each year for necessities such as milk, cheese, eggs, and poultry. And farmers can't get their milk to markets. A PPC government would abolish supply management. All of the other parties want to continue with our affiliation and funding of the United Nations. What used to be a wonderful organization aimed at maintaining world peace has become a cesspool governed by countries with some of the worst records for human rights violations on the planet. The United Nations is now controlled by 133 countries from the Middle East and Northern Africa, and their sole purpose is to impose a one-world government that will take away the sovereignty of countries like Canada. Agreements like Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Paris Accord, and Global Compact on Migration all stem from the United Nations. The People's Party believes that Canadians are more than capable of determining their own destiny. We built a prosperous country in a vast, cold, unexplored land alongside the First Nations, and we never needed unelected officials in New York or Belgium to tell us how to do it. A People's Party government will withdraw from all these accords and return true sovereignty to the true North strong and free. Stephen Harper and the Conservatives are the one who signed Canada into Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. The same Stephen Harper who attended Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is the place where the world elite gather every summer to worship a giant owl they name Molech, and they float the effigy of a baby down a river to burn it on an altar. It's ironic that these types of ceremonies have always been considered satanic by every generation of Christians since Christendom has existed, but here in Canada, we turn a blind eye to it. And not one of our Canadian fake news agencies have ever reported on this issue. And it begs the question, why not? Andrew Scheer whipped his party into voting in favor of the Paris Accord, and although he indicates wanting to repeal the carbon tax, he's just going to replace it with a cap and trade, which amounts to a corporate tax that will simply be absorbed by the consumer in price increases. It was Harper's Conservatives who shut down Veterans Affairs offices in Cape Breton just 4 short years ago, and it's Andrew Scheer who removed Michael Cooper from the Justice Committee simply for telling the truth. The Conservatives have had many opportunities to invoke Section 92.10 of the Constitution over the past 5 decades to pass pipelines across the country, but they've failed to do so, just like the Liberals have failed to do so. So why do people actually believe that Andrew Scheer will do it now? Both the Liberals and the Conservatives have had the opportunity to allow interprovincial trade using Section 91.2 of the Constitution, but neither of them have done that either. The People's Party of Canada is the only party that wishes to respect the Constitution of Canada the way it is written. This should also speak volumes to the electorate. But I get it. The Leafs and the Habs have games tonight, so who has time for the Constitution? Now, before you go on saying that maybe Trudeau is the best man for the job, let me remind you of a few things first. Remember, it was Trudeau who played off his sexual assault of a woman as she experienced it differently than I did.
Again, I don't want to speak for her. I've been reflecting very carefully on what I remember from that incident almost 20 years ago. And again, I am confident that I did not act inappropriately. This lesson that we are learning in, and I'll be blunt about it, often a man experiences an interaction as being benign or not inappropriate, and a woman, particularly in a professional context, can experience it differently, and we have to respect that and reflect on that.
Trudeau is also the feminist who denigrated a 70-year-old woman at a rally in Quebec and then had her physically assaulted by his RCMP thugs. Now, don't get me wrong, many RCMP officers are great men who sacrifice lots for their country, but some of them, well, they should be thrown in jail for their subservience to Trudeau and his merry band of villains. Here's a portion of a video I did in August of 2018 on the subject. How many times did the CBC, CTV, or Global show us this footage? If you guessed 0, you'd be right. You see there, he's saying you're threatening him. No, he's not. She's not threatening anyone. This intolerance has no place in Canada. Your intolerance has no place in Canada. That's our Prime Minister. Cheers. He's screaming, shaking his fist. Does that make sense to anyone?
Regardez qu'est-ce qu'on fait là, madame. Regardez qu'est-ce qu'on fait. Là, vous allez venir avec moi? Non. OK. Là, vous allez venir avec moi maintenant. Regardez.
Lâche-moi, tu me fais mal, mes os, ils cassent, je fais de l'ostéoporose. Lâche-moi, là. Regarde, je vais être bien.
Elle menace pas personne, elle menace pas personne.
J'ai pas menacé
Elle a juste voulu
personne.
parler.
J'ai le droit de dire mon opinion à M. Trudeau.
We mustn't forget the two ethics violations either, nor should we forget the treatment of Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott. Trudeau claims to be a feminist, but only when he's seeking the votes of women. We could also delve into that time when Trudeau told a veteran they were asking for more than the government could give them, but we had $10 million to give a convicted terrorist named Omar Khadr. We could even look at the ties Mr. Trudeau has to convicted pedophiles and sex cult members too, because you can be sure the CBC isn't telling you about those either. I don't agree with Andrew Scheer on much, but I do agree with him when he says that Justin Trudeau isn't as advertised. The problem with this statement, however, is that Andrew Scheer isn't as advertised either. Scheer likes to meet with Muslim imams who condone the practice of beating wives. Tell us, Mr. Scheer, since when has beating your wife been an acceptable practice in Canada? If you also consider that Jason Kenney and John Baird both met with the Aga Khan and bowed down to him, well, then we can understand these meetings. You know, that the same Aga Khan that entertained Justin Trudeau and John Kerry for Christmas back in 2017. Yeah, that Aga Khan. For anyone leaning towards Jagmeet Singh for leadership, well, do we want a leader who isn't even allowed in his home country of India due to his ties to radical Sikh terrorists? I know I don't. Do you? And as for Elizabeth May and the Green Party, the local candidate Clive Doucette mentioned going to Washington 12 times in a local debate. I'm guessing he may have been spending too much time drinking with Miss May instead of remembering that our government does business primarily in Ottawa, not in Washington. But what do we expect from candidates with a leader who will get up on a stage hammered and give a drunken welcome speech to a convicted terrorist only to be pulled off the stage by her buddy Lisa Raitt of the Conservatives?
Do you guys ever wake up with old theme songs from former black and white TV shows that you never thought your kids would ever see and they're running through your head? Like every now and then I wake up thinking about, Lisa, you've got to wait. Lisa, I wake up thinking about a horse is a horse, of course, of course. This morning I wake up thinking this. Why am I thinking this? Do you guys wonder? Liz, hang on. Wait, you know what? Do you guys remember the theme song? Welcome back. Who knew Khadr was spelled K-H-A-D-R? Welcome back, Omar Khadr. It matters to say it. Welcome back, Omar Khadr. You're home. Doesn't it strike you as unusual?
There's a lot unusual about your speech, Liz, but we're going to take off.
Omar Khadr, you got more class than the whole fucking cabinet. Thank you.
The other thing about the NDP and the Green Party is that they only have plans to destroy our economies and send us further into debt, all while destroying the resource-based industries that made Canada what it was in the 1980s and 90s. The Canada of today is fractured. It is dying. It is unemployed. It is hungry. It suffers from a lack of housing, a lack of healthcare, a lack of food, a lack of proper pensions for our seniors. Our veterans are ignored, our armed forces are ignored, our special needs people are ignored, our First Nations are ignored, our youth are ignored. All while all the other parties pander to all the people suffering. What have they actually done? What have they done as they pander to the people that are suffering? Nothing. They've all had the chance to make change happen, but it just keeps getting worse. We claim we have all of these problems, yet we're bringing in nearly 1 million immigrants every year. The media only talks about the 350,000 regular immigrants we bring in, but they refuse to talk about how only half of those are actually going to work. They don't mention the temporary foreign workers. They don't mention the family reunification program, nor the illegal border crossers, nor the refugees, and the many other tens of thousands coming here for birth tourism. A loophole that allows women to give birth in Canada so their newborns automatically get citizenship, and it makes it easier for them to get citizenship. We complain about the crisis in our social programs, but we add the equivalent of the population of Nova Scotia every 2 years or so. How do we expect it to get better? 49% of Canadians want less immigration. Only 6% want more. So the People's Party of Canada is not the fringe. We're actually the only party that is truly standing with the majority. We're the only party looking to reduce immigration numbers, all while increasing economic immigration to help with the tax base. All the other parties want to either maintain current levels or increase them. The PPC is the only party looking to reverse this trend. And all of this immigration would not be necessary if we limited tax-funded abortions to women who really need them, women who've been raped, or women whose lives are in danger. Instead of using abortion as birth control, we need to start teaching our kids about responsible sex. Instead of teaching them that sex is nothing more than a sport or recreational activity designed to fulfill our immediate desires. I'm pro-life, but I'm also pro-choice. But I believe the first choice is the choice to not have sex if you're not ready to have children. Since 1988, we have killed over 3 million babies in hospitals and abortion clinics all over this country. I've had so many people attack me for my position on abortion. And the one thing I get the most is, no man can tell a woman what to do with her body. Well, here's the thing. What if it was a woman taking this position? What if I told you that my wife and my mother and my daughters agree with my position? What if I told you that Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, one of our candidates in Alberta, has even gone as far as co-writing a bill to put an end to third trimester abortions immediately? Would you say that she's a man telling women what to do with their bodies? Would you call this brilliant woman anti-woman as well? Or would you accuse her of not being a strong woman? You see, taking the pro-life position is not just about women, it's about an unborn baby. It's not some lump of flesh like they've told us on TV and on the news for 3 decades. We're making this about women too. Do people know the suicide rates for women who've had abortions? Do people know the increased risk for breast cancer in women that have had abortions? Cervical cancer? Future miscarriages? PTSD? And other negative impacts on women's health when they choose to abort? Do people know the real statistics? Do people know how many unborn Canadians have lost their lives since 1988? Do people know how difficult it is to adopt in Canada? I have 8 adopted first cousins, 4 boys, 4 girls. 4 girls whose biological mothers could have made the same choice so many young women are being encouraged to make today, but they didn't. They chose life instead. And because of it, my family has 20 or so more members in it that would not be here if our abortion laws had been in place and promoted in the 70s, 80s, and 90s like they are today. This is why I'm pledging 10% of my annual salary to the re-education of the people of Cape Breton-Canso on all matters regarding abortion, fetal development, and the life of unborn babies. A vote for the People's Party of Canada is not only a vote for unborn babies, but it's a vote for women and their mental health. It's a vote for couples who can't have kids of their own and are seeking to start a family, only to be put on waiting lists to adopt a child from a foreign country. And if all that isn't enough, the People's Party of Canada is the only party that wishes to review the Indian Act because we feel it is too paternalistic and it has become a tool used by politicians to pander to First Nation chiefs in return for votes. Some First Nation reserves are thriving and have money pouring into the coffers, while others don't even have running water. I hear stories of chiefs in bed with politicians and their families living high off the hog while the communities around them suffer. This has to stop, and there must be accountability. It's time we put people in Ottawa that will hold the federal government accountable to the people of Canada. That is why we are called the People's Party of Canada, because we are here for the people, and our party is made up of everyday average Canadians who want nothing more than security and prosperity for future generations. We must hold the provinces accountable on healthcare and other provincial jurisdictions. We must respect the Constitution and the exclusivity of power it establishes between the provincial and federal governments. The People's Party of Canada will withdraw from the Paris Accord and all other United Nations treaties that cripple our economy, all while strengthening our relationship with the United States, our true partners on this world stage. We will abolish corporate bailouts and corporate handouts. We'll abolish supply management. We'll decrease the amount of bureaucrats within government. We'll fix the Phoenix pay system for government workers and our veterans and service people. We'll put more money in the pockets of Canadians with our two flat tax rates. And by eliminating the capital gains tax, we also allow private member. The People's Party will abolish corporate bailouts and handouts. We'll abolish supply management. We'll decrease significantly the amount of bureaucrats within our government. We'll fix the Phoenix pay system for government workers and our veterans and service people. We'll put more money in Canadians' pockets with our two flat tax rates and by eliminating the capital gains tax. We'll also allow private member bills from our members, ensuring that our ridings, in my case Cadbert and Canso, that our ridings' priorities are heard and not ignored. We're allowed to vote on matters of conscience, and however we wish to, something unheard of in party politics. We want to protect the rights of gun owners. We want to stop foreign aid and put the needs of Canadians first, with the exception, of course, of any humanitarian crisis. We want to stop funding abortions all over the world and make sure our seniors, veterans, and First Nations are well taken care of before becoming the piggy bank for the rest of the planet. We want to revive our resource-based industries that built this great country and put our products to market. We want to run the pipeline from coast to coast and allow Canada to be prosperous and end the reliance on equalization payments by giving incentives to provinces to develop their own natural resource sectors. We want to allow our products to be sold interprovincially, and we are the only party that wants to balance the budget within a single mandate. There is no real choice this election other than the People's Party of Canada. They say that doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results, is a form of insanity. While voting Conservative to get rid of the Liberals and voting Liberal to get rid of the Conservatives for the past 100 years has done nothing to help us and fits this description of insanity. We wouldn't be in this mess if it wasn't for both of those parties. So tomorrow, I humbly ask you to end the insanity and join the common sense revolution. Vote Billy Joyce for Cape Breton Canso and Maxime Bernier for the future Prime Minister of Canada. I'm done now.